What's up, everybody? I made a kind of like a funny video where I was like laughing my butt off the other day. I figured today I'd kind of switch gears, talk a little bit about more um, tough things to talk about, things that are not so like glamorous and funny and a little more serious side, not so much of the facetious and sarcastic side, because laughing is just a way of like kind it's a it's like an avoidance technique, you know what I mean? Like it's people use like comedy and that sort of thing to kind of cover up and conceal and whatever for insecurities or for like nervousness or fears, stuff like that. They use that as a way to kind of mask and cover up and hide how they're really feeling, like on the inside, like truly, or to use as a distraction because it's a defense mechanism, like the show The Dog Whisperer with Caesar Milan, where the dogs, like, what they do is it's either flight, fight, avoidance, or submission, you know. And people are kind of similar in that regard, too. Some people live in denial. They just want to deny everything, pretend like it never happened and that it doesn't exist or something like that, So when they get confronted by it and they have to kind of answer for their actions, if you will, they try to play pass the buck, the blame game, pitiful pearl, woe is me mentality, you know what I mean? That sort of thing, pin the tail on the donkey, as a, because people have coping mechanisms, as far as dealing with grief or dealing with loss or dealing with change. Not everybody is good to just adapt to any kind of situation you throw at them. Some people need time to kind of heal or process after a like long relationship, and other people, they could be with someone for like 10 years and the very next day they're have a new person in their life just that quick. They can just flick a switch like it didn't, that 10 years of their life never even existed or happened. You know what I mean? And other people might, just like smoking cigarettes where it damages your lungs, and for as many years that you've been smoking, they recommend that you don't smoke as many years as you have been smoking so that your lungs can heal and get back to a normal working status or whatever, you know what I mean? And so it's kind of the same thing for individuals with like relationships or anything in life. But anywho, enough about the whole psychology about it all. I mean, pretty much everybody has fears and phobias, and anybody that tells you, "Oh, I'm not afraid of anything," they're lying. Everybody has something that concerns them, worries them, gives them anxiety, makes them lose sleep over, things they can't quite shake. Either something they saw in a past life, in a dream, in like their childhood, growing up, whatever, that sort of thing. And so for them, if they go from living in, say, the East Coast and they move to the West Coast, they're like, come in, they're a totally different person. It's like their life that they left behind isn't going to follow them. All those, the drama and the problems and all the hardships and whatever that made them to the point where they're like, I can't deal with this anymore. I've got to go somewhere else where they think those things don't exist. You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me just move from the Bronx, New York to like Los Angeles, California, because the Bronx is known notoriously for being a bad neighborhood and like not, the projects are the ghetto, so the slums, the streets, or whatever. So if I move to LA, people are going to think different of me because, they're going to see status and hear the name LA and think success. And, when you think of like, New York or like the Bronx, you don't really think of that sort of mindset and mentality, because it's different when you live in Silicon Valley than when you live in whatever, somewhere in the Bronx, you know what I mean? Like, where it's a bunch of like crack houses and like all kinds of drug deals and drive-bys and gangbangers and shootings and, all that kind of stuff. And like I say, in the West Coast, it's all sunshine and rainbows and happiness, and like it's kind of like the grass is greener on the other side, and it's the same way with like marriage. That's why a lot of 50% statistically end in divorce, because a lot of people think that, well, I've been with this person 10 or 12 or however long, and so they're like, it kind of it dawns on them that like, I could either continue in this relationship that I'm not happy in, or that my partner's not happy in, to, basically you're just miserable. Either you yourself are miserable, or they're miserable and you're making them miserable, or you're either they're making you miserable or you're making them miserable, or maybe it's a little bit of both, and it's kind of passed on. Oh, it's your fault, it's you, it's this, it's that, you know what I mean? It's like nobody really wants to take a certain percentage of the blame and like take ownership and responsibility for their part in what they may or may not did or didn't do. And a lot of it's speculation, rumors, and it doesn't help with the media, paparazzi, social media, friends, family. They're all putting their 2 cents in. Then you got teachers and like student, all this other, you know what I mean? And so you're trying to juggle the struggle. Like you're trying to put a fake smile and everything's like happy, and that everything's great in whoever the person and whoever their identity, whoever they are, Bill is or whatever, and it's just not. And it's just gets to the point where you're living a double life. It's like being a dual agent where you're like trying to be an undercover cop, like for a drug bust or something, and the people are kind of catching on that they think you're like have a wire and what, you know what I mean? And so you've got to be careful, because your life literally is on the line, and it's like make or break. So it's like you got to put on your poker face and kind of use whatever kind of street smarts or whatever you can to kind of get them off the like trail of the breadcrumb trail, or the like cheese for the mouse or what, you know what I mean? And kind of distract, deflect, divert, change the sub, not really bring that much like attention. If they're bringing the heat on you and you're starting to bake and you're starting to fry like a lobster, you got to kind of like have sunscreen for like lobster protect, you know what I mean, or whatever, to avoid the like the, you know what I mean, the heat. And speaking of heat, a little bit about myself. A lot of people don't know, besides just that I'm a third of a century years old, or that I'm single, and it's by choice, because I'm trying to do the right thing and save myself for marriage, and to kind of like offer that, it's more of a like a religious thing, because I was raised Roman Catholic, and so it's like a spiritual thing. And it's like I don't want to, not that I'm trying to pass judgment of like my personal beliefs on anybody. That's not, if like I can help you, get to know Jesus, like I have, and how he's impacted and changed my, and all that kind of stuff, great. Like that's what I'm here for. You know what I mean? That's what, like my dad used to say, that's what they pay me the big bucks for, son. Like if he'd work on small engines or something on the side, being a welder, fabricator, pipe fitter, whatever, money didn't, like cover as far as like copays and deductibles for like medical expenses. Because, I had cancer when I was like 8 years old, like 25 some years ago. And that was basically when I was going through the treatments, with radiation and chemotherapy. And so like my hair, they call it a receding hairline. I call it partial baldness or whatever, the bald fade, or, I always say, like, oh, that's her loss and my Rogaine. Like, just to kind of make it seem like it's not as big of a deal as it, appear, you know what I mean? To be like, it doesn't bother me as much, like, it's obvious, you know what I mean? Like, you can't deny it. It's like certain things you can hide in life, but like being blind or whatever, those sort of things, you can't really hide that, you know. Eventually the truth's gonna come out, so you might as well spill the beans, you know. So this is, I guess, my version or interpretation or whatever of spilling the beans or just putting it out there. You know what I mean? It's like, went this far, just peel the band up, rip it off. So, like I say, getting back on point and on track, and that's like, focus, Jake, doing good. Keep up the good work, But, I know, like I say, the main point I was trying to do this for is kind of like educate and teach. It's not for entertainment purposes. It's not like I'm getting, a bunch of subscribers to hear this, rant and rave or whatever about this guy. And, oh, he might be having a bad day or whatever, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And like sympathy card, like a pity rose, like on The Bachelor or something. It's like, no, it's not, it's more to it than that. You know what I mean? Like, imagine, if you will, you're me, okay? You're, like I say, 8 years old, you were talking 3/4 of my life ago. And anytime you wanted anything, the nurses, the doctor, they're just within snapping, you know what I mean, at my beck and call. It's kind of like being a prince and your dad's the king and your mom's the queen and you got a sister as a princess or whatever. And you're like the firstborn, so you're the next in line for the throne. So they're teaching you about everything that has to do with that transition, that change to when you, get old enough and whatever, that's what you're going to become. It's like being the owner of a family business and then they pass it on to you. And sometimes you may not want to continue on that legacy and keep the train going as far as that. You might want to branch out and do your own thing. But basically, I, had it pretty, like, easy. A lot of people think, oh, yeah, like, I had the, like, dream scenario, if you will. Yeah, in a twisted, sick, dark, like, tunneled, like, nightmare. You know what I mean? Like, I had to go through a lot of messed up stuff to get some of those perks, benefit, and research and all that kind of thing. And it's like, do you really think that you gotta weigh the pros and cons? Was that really a benefit or whatever to me, or is it more of a hindrance and like a disadvantage, a setback? You know what I mean? Like for a setup, or like to show his thing through my testimony and through my story. You know what I mean? So, anyways, if you can see this, I don't know. Yeah, okay, so that says Holy Bible, blah, Thomas Kincaid, Painter of Light. That's just a Bible that I have. I could sit there and be like, poof, on the Bible and swear my hand on it that I'm telling the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you Jesus, so help you God. You know what I mean? Like they do in court or when they plead temporary insanity because they're not normally whatever, but because of all that stress and that pressure that people put all these unrealistic expectations and all these like this weight on this burden, it's not your cross to bear, and you're picking up all the slack for all these other people that are not doing their part, and you're doing more than your or at least in your eye, in your point of view, in your perspective, because it's all about like these glasses where it's all about getting things in like focus, you know what I mean, and into like seeing clearly, like perfect vision, you know what I mean? Like some people get LASIK eye surgery, and then they might go blind, there's always that chance, but people do it every day and risk it for the biscuit, you know what I mean? But it's like risk reward. But anywho, I know like you can see, my teeth, they're, chipped and stuff. I used to have braces, a couple missing teeth, whatever. So I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, you know what I mean? In an imperfect world, I mean, who wants to be just like everybody, you know what I mean? So for me, I know I'm a little bit like different, and I wouldn't consider like it to be like special, if you will. You know what I mean? It's more or less, I'm not the typical. It's like that show on like Netflix is called like Atypical. You know, a lot of people think that, you know, I am like ADD or ADHD or bipolar, schizophrenia, something like that, some kind of whatever, you know, autistic on the spectrum, Asperger's syndrome, you know, whatever. You know, some people might even think I have MPD, multiple personality disorder, or DID, dissociative identity disorder. You know, I've never been tested for any of that stuff, so some of those might apply to my situation, some of them might, maybe none of them do, or all of them do. Who knows? You don't know until you get the checkup, you know, and you go to the health aid, and then they say, oh, well, here's your status report. Here's, you know, what we found out based on, you know, these things we ran, you know, so it's kind of like that. It's like going to Ancestry.com and finding out my, you know, Irish descent or whatever, and it tells you exactly a breakdown of all the different things based on blood samples and stuff like that. If you really want to know like your heritage and all that kind of thing, or like your family crest and that sort of whatever. Point being is that when you get used to getting, like I say, almost anything and everything you want whenever you want it, and there's like no competition, you know what I'm saying? Because I was a kid, I didn't understand that there were people like behind the stage kind of taking away the competition, you know what I mean, to where magically, you know, I become the victor in this story and the hero, and like, you know what I mean? It's like the girls believe in the fairy tale happy ending and whatever, you know, and, you know, that kind of thing. And the truth, the reality is, it's like I was given sort of like a lie in some regards. It'd be like being in a castle, you know, and you think like you're a prince or whatever, but really you're like one of like the servants or something. And you think to yourself, well, I live in a castle. I have access to things that most commoners, most poor folk, you know, outside of the palace and whatever, don't have access to, you know, like a secret backstage pass. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of confusing because you're mixing up fantasy with reality, and you can't twist, you know, don't get it twisted. It's kind of like people that play games like Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever, and this sort of thing, where they're building this world that is like more real to them than their actual life, because they get so time consumed and tedious into that it becomes a part of them, and so that becomes their reality, that alternate dimension, that alternate universe, if you will. Like for gamer, and they game so much that those are their friends. So like their family, people they know, school, whatever. Those people are just strangers, basically. Like if you're not on point and current with their world or whatever, you're you're lost. You're like nobody. Like they don't even consider you a person to or like talk to, or like get to know, because they don't want, you know what I mean? Like they try to get to know other people in, you know, like socially, because a lot of people are like socially inept, socially awkward in social situations, social settings. So when you just throw them into something and they have like no experience, they're going to react a certain way because they don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of not a fair assessment, not a fair fight when you throw someone in the ring and they weren't ready. They didn't know that it was go time. You know what I mean? Like they weren't prepared. They didn't have a script. It's kind of like all of a sudden, oh, you're a parent, and you're just like, what? I didn't even know that was even a pot. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I've heard all my, I'm staring. All of a sudden now, out of no, you know, miraculously, I just have this gift, like miracle pregnancy or something. Like, there's got to be a mistake. There's no, like, oh, like most of my adult life, like I've been told a different narrative. So when you start comparing and doing a little like cross-examination, you find out it's like having cross-contamination, and you kind of put the pieces together and you're like, wait a minute, I've been tricked or duped or deceived or whatever. It's, I've been lied to, and people were getting away with it until you get to the point in your life where they can't hide you from the world anymore, and you got to go out in your bubble and kind of break out of your shell or kick the bird out of the nest or whatever, grow your sea leg or whatever and fly a little birdie. And you find out that there's some stuff that you weren't shown how to properly manage and deal with. So that kind of stress and that kind of exposure or overexposure or underexposure, it's kind of like getting fake tan, you know what I mean? And get so like that once you stop doing that, like like I say, it's a part of you as like your persona, and it's just like Jeff Dunham with puppets and being a puppeteer and being like a voice, to all these different little puppets that he has, and that becomes to where he feels like that's his way of like release of like pressure that he feels of like to perform, like performance anxiety, and like when he goes on stage, everything else doesn't matter, it disappears. It kind of is takes a backstage pass, if you will, and he's just focused and he's just in the moment and he's just present with the audience. And that's that little relationship, that bond that he has, that he's worked decades and stuff to really kind of hone his craft. And people don't really give him the credit. They think that, oh, he's mentally kind of like a social outcast. It's kind of like the social distancing thing, but where people do that to other people. Where, oh, if you're not in like high school, you're not a jock, or you're not on the football team, or you're not on the cheerleading squad, or you're not a cheerleader or whatever, you're not anybody in their little clique or their bubble, and they put you in a little box and like kind of close the door on Pandora and be like, oh, you're going to be a problem. Oh, we can't have problems in our little, thing, because that interrupts the flow of whatever we got going on. And so if you're trying to interfere or you try to speak your mind or have an opinion and it doesn't agree with the head cheerleader or the head jock on the football or whatever, they're going to shun you and they're going to outcast you and be like, oh, you're different, oh, you're this, that, and the other, and call you all kinds of names and like kind of make you feel less of a person or like less of a man, and really question your like manhood or like your intellect or your whatever, you know what I mean? Like if someone has a stutter, they'll start, about the lisp or whatever, you know what I mean? And they'll kind of mock you and make fun and make it look like you're the one that has the problem, when really it's the other way around. They're the one that can't kind of handle whatever it is that they might be going through at the time, like seasonal, like a phase. So they lash out and they take it out on you. And that's unfortunate. It's unfair. It's not right to you that they use you as like thinking that you're like your weakness, and they try to penetrate, like to find where is it that he or she or wherever is inadequate at or inept at or isn't better than me at or whatever. And as soon as they find some area that either you excel that they or some area that you don't, that they do, they'll challenge you to something and you'll lose or whatever, and then they'll just make you feel like small, like insignificant, like you don't matter, and like there's all these hate crimes going on and like all kinds of like things in the public and in the news. And if you're not careful, you start believing the lies, and the whole thing about that you're not good enough or you're not worthy or that you're, you know, that you're that you're not like enough or whatever, like that you're not adequate or sufficient or that you are, you know, somehow like that you don't belong there or that you have no business, you know what I mean, kind of trying out or what, you know what I mean, like as if they make the rules or something and decide your fate or something, you know what I mean? And people can be real nasty and just really kind of lay it on thick. And you've got to kind of pick through the, weeds and kind of pick yourself back up and dust yourself off and don't let that kind of negative hate and self hate and turn into like self harm or self mutilating, where people are like suicide and stuff like that, where people are so critical and so self-conscious from the judgment and from the shaming and like body shaming for girls and all this to where they get eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia where they can't even have a mirror in their house or they can't have a weight scale, because they're so afraid, oh, I'm not a size 0 and all these girls or these models that they compare themselves to in the magazines are, happy and they think that it's like, magic or whatever, that they think that they're just because they smile that makes them happy or just because they're married or it makes them, a certain level of status achievement. And if you haven't achieved that by either a certain age or certain, you know what I mean, they think that you're like behind the 8 ball or that you're missing it or whatever, or if you are saying that you're lonely or, there's a difference between being like alone and like lonely, you know what I mean, or whatever. And so it's not really a fair assessment. It's kind of like reading a chapter in a book that say has 50 or 100 or whatever, and you think you know the whole book based on any one of whatever random chapters, or you might have read a few chapters and think you've solved the Rubik's Cube to that book, or seen a couple however long of a movie and think, oh, I got it all figured out. Or you watched a trailer or a highlight reel or something and you think, oh yeah, that gave away the whole movie. That's got to be what it's all about, because that's what highlight reels are about, is to do the best bits of the thing to sell it and make money and whatever for whoever it is. And it's like, that's not really, you know what I mean? Like, the only way you really know how to judge something like fully is to fully submerge yourself and dive into it, and really dig a little deeper and really get to the heart of the issue and watch the whole thing from beginning to end, the whole duration, whether it's an hour or a couple hours or it takes you, a day to read the thing somehow if you got a bunch of time, or it takes you a couple months. As long as when you get finished, what's going on and what it's all about. That's all that matters. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you finish the fastest or you're the last person to turn your test in or whatever. Who cares? The first person that turned it in might have got the worst score out of everybody, and the person that put it in last might not have got the best score. But I mean, you know what I mean? Just because they turn it in last doesn't mean they're going to have the best score. And just because a person turns theirs in first doesn't mean they'll have the best score either. So speed and slow, they don't always correlate to the best or the worst. You know what I mean? Oh, because they spent the most time on it, so theirs is going to be the best done project, or they were the quickest at it, so their one's going to, you know what I mean? Like, that's not how stuff works, but that's how people think. And so you got to think higher thinking, higher level. It's like education with going to college, and there's so many people I know that have college degrees and aren't able to use them because they aren't hiring in that field that they got their degree in or their you know, associates or bachelors or masters or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So don't let people dictate and decide and try to fill your head with nonsense. Don't listen to the comments, like the trolls on the internet, you know what I mean? Just do the best that you can do. Just be genuine, be authentic, be real. Don't sit there and try to be something you're not. Don't try to be a pretender and fake stuff, because that's disingenuous. You know, it's not authentic. It's not gonna get you. You might get somewhere temporarily, you know, but eventually they're gonna figure it out, and they're gonna know that you either cheated, lied, or whatever to get to wherever it was you got, or maybe you didn't, and you got there all on your own talents and abilities. And people are so hateful and jealous and spiteful that they'd rather discredit you than give you the credit you deserve. They'd rather try to make up all kinds of rumors and lies and speculation and say, oh, they only got this job because they worked at this survey, or they only got it because their dad was it, or whatever it is. And it's like, sometimes whatever their claim to fame is of how you got there, it doesn't matter how you got there, just that you got there. You know what I'm saying? It's just like for getting paid your paycheck. You don't care how you get paid, just that you get paid. You know, it's the same deal. Same rule applies. You know what I mean? So, but my thing that mainly kind of was tugging at my heart, if you will, was kind of like I say, about like my look, this stuff, you know what I mean? As far as that, because I'm not the most, I know I'm not going to win like most attractive, you know, person or whatever, even in just my state or my city or whatever. But that being said, a lot of girls, when they're trying to date and find a guy, they're looking at the superficial, which sucks. And the majority is guys that are like, girls are attracted to bad boys and that reputation and stuff. So the good guys, like, you know, me, get passed over or don't get a second look, you know, or second review or whatever. You know, we're like an afterthought, or like second fiddle. You know, like sometimes not even that. It might be a couple more down the line. But the point is that, you know, you don't want to be, you want to be with somebody that's gonna be like a equal kind of a match. You know what I mean? As far as that's really gonna push you to do better than you ever thought you could. You know, and so it just kind of gnaws at me a little bit, and it like breaks my heart, because if you think about it this way. How many guys do you know, honestly? Okay, because I beat a lot of statistics that people thought I wouldn't make. You know what I mean? And here I